If you ever wanted to join the gang of chess killers, you are welcome to do so. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 key ideas that I use, and as well as my students, to dominate against any average player and to join the elite chess players. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me make a couple moves so that we have something to think about, and then we'll discuss exactly how to find proper moves in any position. Of course, it's not just about the position we are talking about, but just so that you know those 3 universal rules applicable for any chess position, for any chess game. Alright, so let's start with this. Let's say we're going in the Queen's Gambit, one of the classical chess openings, and for example, let's start right here. So imagine that it is you are playing a game and it is your turn. How would you play here as white? Just think about this for a second, and then we'll compare different options as well as how you can pick the best one. So what can white do here? Well, there are a lot of different options here, really. White can develop one of their bishops. For example, this one can go to f4 or to g5. The light square bishop can be developed after g3, followed by bishop g2, or maybe e3, so that the bishop can be active along this diagonal. Perhaps you can take this pawn on c5, and maybe we can come up with a couple other options, but like at first, at least, we have these moves candidates. So which one is the best? How do you think? Well, let me first address one of the really common problems, and it's actually the rule number 1. This is an old rule that I stated many years ago, but many players still aren't aware of it. And it states to take is a mistake. So in this position, I've just checked the database, and the second most common move in this position is pawn takes c5, which is a big, gigantic, mammoth error that you gotta just remember this rule once to take is a mistake and never fall for this error anymore in your games. What's the problem here? Whenever there is some sort of a tension, when pieces or pawns attack each other, usually in order to make your life simpler, it is very tempting to release the tension, get rid of it, so that it is easier for you to calculate further moves. But the problem here is that very often, in the vast majority of the cases, as you release the tension, you actually help your opponent. Such as in this case, if you trade on c5, what you actually do is you help your opponent to bring his bishop out on a more active square, and you do that with your own move. So black doesn't even have to spend any extra time for this development move because you helped black to achieve that outcome. And nothing else really changes in the position besides black got their bishop more active. And that is usually the case. By the way, the opposite is also true. Think about this. Imagine black captures here on d4. What's going to happen? Well, you will relocate your knight to a more active central square, which is going to be nice for you. So the same rule to take is a mistake applies both for white and for black and for any kind of position. I mean, just one quick disclaimer, so to say, okay? If you can capture something and get a particular benefit, then go ahead and do it. What I mean by a particular benefit, if you can win material, or if you can capture something and then there's a force in line and you checkmate the opponent's king, sure, go ahead and do this. But if it's just an exchange, then don't trade for the sake of an exchange. That's usually wrong. So d takes c5 is actually kind of wrong, okay? And the second rule, which helps you to find proper moves, states this: don't just move around, attack. Challenge your opponent, create problems for your opponent. That's what really separates stronger players from the rest. So an average Joe, while thinking about this position or any other chess position, thinks about it that way. All right, it is an opening, I gotta develop pieces. How do I do that? Maybe I'm bringing this bishop out somewhere, or maybe I want to play e3 and bring this bishop out somewhere. So that's how an average Joe thinks about it. If you compare that to a strong chess player, a strong player has a particularly different mindset. Here's how a strong player thinks about it. How do I attack? So that's the first question. How do I put problems to my opponent? How do I challenge him? And then you see that it totally changes your focus. And with that in mind, although white has a number of developing moves and they all are decent, the move bishop g5 should be the best, because here you actually create some problems for black, right? We threaten potentially to take here, and if black recaptures, that's going to weaken this pawn on d5, and we'll be able to pick it up on the next move. So we are already creating a specific threat that black will have to address somehow. And that's why this move is superior to any other just a move, okay? Because here we not only activate a bishop, but we also attack, and that is the second rule. Okay, let's take it back. So that just already goes to show you how you can easily find proper moves by following just these 2 ideas. So first is to take as a mistake, and second, to attack, to challenge your opponent instead of just moving around. But let's actually make this exchange, because anyway, that's what people love doing often. They haven't watched this video, so that they don't know that it's wrong. And after bishop takes c5, let me now flip the board, and now let's think about this from black side. So here's another very common situation. After your opponent goes here bishop g5, and creates this pin. How would you play here if you're playing black? That's another question. Just think about this for a few seconds. It is your turn, your opponent goes bishop g5. What is your reaction here? Bishop g5 quite obviously creates the same threat to this pawn on d5. White wants to probably take this knight on f6, and after that, pick up this pawn on d5 with either a knight or a queen. And for that reason, most players in this position automatically defend. They play the move bishop to e6. According to the database, that's the most played move in this position. Now, what's wrong with this move? Well, it kind of ties together with the previous rule we discussed, okay? That you don't want to just move around, you want to attack, you want to create problems for your opponent, right? And for this particular case, the rule states that offense is the best defense. So even when your opponent attacks you, you gotta still think in the very same fashion. How do I attack, right? So instead of thinking, okay, my opponent attacked me, how do I defend this pawn? You ask yourself another question, how do I attack? How do I pressure my opponent? And with that in mind, the first move that you gotta think about is the move pawn to d4, because that's an attacking move. You go forward onto opponent's half of the board and you attack something, you force the knight to move. So in positions like that, and as well as in any other position, I want you to really think that way. How do I go forward? How do I attack? How do I challenge my opponent? So d4 is actually a lot stronger than just playing a defensive move bishop to e6. And again, this applies to any other position just as well. By playing d4, we attack the knight, we force it to go. We cannot keep making attacking moves, they have to defend, okay? So after d4 here, the most played move for white is knight to e4. And let me ask you for the last time to think about this position for a few seconds and to tell me which move we would play here if you are playing black. Okay, it is black to play. Your opponent has just played knight e4. Obviously, white is attacking here, and you got to deal with that somehow. So how do you play? Well, I hope that after studying the previous two rules, you will not consider the move bishop e7. So that's the last thing you want to do. Just playing defensive move, playing back, again, is the last thing you want to do. Do not do that, okay? So instead, you ask yourself the very same question. How do I attack? Offense is the best defense. So 94, okay, he attacked me. How do I counterattack? And there are a couple options. For example, you can go bishop b4 and check the king. If you want to get out of this pin, you may also consider, queen a5. That also checks the king. So there are already a couple more aggressive options. For example, bishop b4 looks pretty cool because that not only removes this bishop from the attack, but also counterattacks white's king. Here, the most played move by white is knight to d2. And at this point, let me also address the third rule. Okay, let me share the final secret of strong players. In fact, the final two moves of white were big blunders. They actually overlooked a strong tactical option of black. And I'm not sure if you could find it or not, but regardless of that, I hope that you'll get this idea. So here's the idea. Whenever pieces start attacking each other, such as in this case, you gotta take some time to calculate. Because you gotta know when to calculate. You cannot take time to calculate at every move, because then you'll run out of time, especially if you're playing blitz, right? But at some points, when pieces start attacking each other, when there is a real tension, you gotta take a little time to calculate. Here's what I mean. Here, white attacks the bishop, white attacks this knight on f6, white puts pressure onto this pawn on d4, white is putting a lot of pressure, right? Simultaneously, you can counterattack the king, you can pick up this knight, there are many pieces attacking each other. In positions like that, the value of the move is actually going very up, right? Because the consequences of a wrong move are instantaneous. You can just blunder a piece, right? Or you can ruin your position completely and lose. And for that reason, it makes sense to take a little time to think about this and to consider different options, especially the forced moves, which are checks and captures. Because if you can capture something, maybe you'll just win material and win the game, right? So for that reason, in this position, it's time for black to stop playing automatically, mechanically, and kind of start a little bit of thinking and thinking a little bit slower and taking time to calculate. Again, what you want to calculate are forced moves. For example, bishop b4 check or knight takes c4 capture. So those are the moves that you can calculate. Maybe also queen a5 because it's also check, okay? And in this position, actually knight takes e4 is a beautiful little combo because although we are sacrificing our queen on d8, after that we have this nice follow-up bishop to b4 check to the king. And it turns out that the only way for white to cover the king is by playing knight to d2. After that, we take this knight, check to the king. White has to give up their queen now. And after knight takes d2, at the end of the day, we are a piece up. For example, if we continue the line, king takes, and we've got two minor pieces versus one, thus black achieved a winning endgame. By the way, if you want to know how to deal with this annoying pin, recently I recorded a new video about this where I'm sharing with you several powerful techniques how to punch back instead of just defending. And if you also enjoyed today's trading session, I've got this free masterclass that goes more in depth into this subject and that will hopefully help you to level up your chess quickly. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.